Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we are going to be ranking each Doctor's third story. So each Doctor, fresh off a new regeneration, their third story. Because most people I have found, you see a lot of videos that rank the regeneration stories or a lot of videos that rank the post-regeneration stories. And it got me to thinking, not many people rank like a Doctor's second story. So I did a video on that, which I've never seen anyone else do. You can actually find that video up here if you want to check that out. And I found that while post-regeneration stories tend to be a mixed bag and are definitely not always one of the Doctor's best, especially since the actor, of course, is still getting into the role, a lot of times the second stories I really like. Matter of fact, most of the second stories for a Doctor I really enjoyed. I was surprised by that, by just how many of them are really good. Until I started trying to rank them, I'm like, man, most of these are phenomenally good. That really surprised me. So I decided, well, I've never seen anyone do a list talking about a Doctor's third story either. Because really it takes a few stories to kind of get a feel for a Doctor, or for a Doctor to kind of solidify, their feet in the shoes, so to speak. And I thought, well, it usually takes about 5 or 6 stories. Usually about 5 or 6 stories, I think, for an actor has a firm grasp on the role, or, we've got a firm grasp on their Doctor. So I think it would be good to do ranking lists for maybe the 3rd, 4th, and 5th stories. So we're going to do a list ranking the 3rd stories today. And now the 3rd stories weren't like the 2nd stories, where most of the 2nd stories were phenomenal. I did find a lot of the 3rd stories were again hit or miss. We'll talk about more of that when we talk about it at the end. Now, I've never seen Underwater Menace, so that one will not be on the list. And I have never seen, well, with Paul McGann, it's also harder. I don't know technically what his 3rd story would be. So we're only gonna have 11 entries on this list. And starting at the bottom is Rosa. Rosa itself is not a bad episode, and I love the fact that Chris Chibnall tried to go back to historicals. And again, it's not exactly a pure historical, but it is nice to see historicals. And the episode has some great moments, just the awe that Ryan has being in the room with these civil rights icons. You can just see it in Ryan's face, the awe he is in. That's a really cool moment. But being as someone who was born and raised in Mississippi, I have issues with its portrayal of some of the characters in the episode, especially some of the racist white characters, because they seem very two-dimensional, very cartoonish, very caricature. Which I just honestly find offensive, flat out offensive. And I don't think it's a good message, when your story is supposed to be, hey, racism is bad, that you have a racist stereotype of, a 1950s Southern person. I find it highly offensive. And while it's more an issue because, again, I was born there, I was raised there, I do think for people, especially like people in the UK who aren't familiar with this story, I think it's a good chance for them to learn kind of the history of what happened there. So it's a good episode, I think, for people not from the area who's kind of had the story drummed in their head all their life, which can get irksome after a time. I think this is a good chance for people not familiar with the story to learn about the story, because it is a good historical lesson, it really is. But my issues with the story are just something I can't look past, so it has to be at the bottom for me, because I don't like that caricature stereotype it has. While I can believe there was people back then who were like that, I can't believe that literally everyone back then was like that. And so I find that extremely off-putting. Next on the list is Kenda. I just don't get Kenda. I kinda hate Kenda. I just never got into that story. It needs a rewatch. It's not one of those I'm just never gonna watch again, I think. It needs a rewatch. I will probably rewatch it right before I watch Snake Dance. Whenever the season 20 box set comes out. Was Snake Dance on season 20 or 21? I think it's season 20. Before I watch Snake Dance, I will probably watch Kenda again, but I just didn't get into that episode at all. I found it vastly unappealing. One of my least favorite classic Who stories, easily. And next on the list is Delta and the Bannerman, which is my least favorite McCoy story. I just never got into Delta and the Bannerman. I think Delta and the Bannerman was third. Yeah, Delta and the Bannerman was third. I sometimes mix up between it and Paradise Towers, and I was just thinking I ranked. Let's try that again. Take two. Next on the list is Delta and the Bannerman, my least favorite McCoy story. I just don't get into Delta and the Bannerman. This is another one of those stories when people are like, oh, it's part of season 24. Season 24 is so silly and campy and cartoonish and slapstick and caricaturish. Because the only people who say this are people who've watched Time in the Ronnie and think that's season 24. I, on the other hand, I'm watching Delta and the Bannerman going, I just watched an entire busload of people die. You know, I just watched Kenda get shot and killed. Let's see. This is, of course, coming right after Paradise Towers, which had the cannibal ladies who get drugged down the garbage disposal. Yeah, silly, comic, slapstick comedy. You know, busload of people dying. Doesn't that just put you into a laugh riot? Yeah, I never got into Delta and the Bannerman. The whole green baby thing, the guy turning himself into an alien to be with her, it's really weird. I mean, the music's weird. Like, some of the music works and some of the music doesn't. I did like the one girl, Ryan, or Ray, is that her name? Ray, with the kind of motorcycle jacket. I liked her. The actress playing her did good. I know she was a potential companion. I think she'd have made a good companion, but I'd rather have Ace. I love Ace. But I just don't get into Delta and the Bannerman much. The villain's cool. I do like the villain in it. But yeah, and then the little hotel they go to looks all run down and not really like it should be open for business, because where they filmed it was a rundown place that really wasn't open for business. Yeah, I don't understand why Bobby likes Delta and the Bannerman as much as he does. Because one of my subscribers I know loves Delta and the Bannerman, and I don't get it. I don't like Delta and the Bannerman. Next is Unquiet Dead. This one's really good. I just can't ever watch it because it terrifies me. I do consider The Unquiet Dead to be the scariest Doctor Who episode ever made, because I just find it unnerving. I think a lot of it's down to the people playing the zombies. Their performance is so good at being something that's a semblance of a human being, but very obviously not a human being. And of course, the sounds they make and the special effects around their face with the actual makeup on them all adds to that. So it's just a perfect storm of that going on to create something that's creepy and unnerving. The guy playing Charles Dickens is great as well, and I do like the camera work, and I think Eccleston and Billy Piper are fantastic in it. So it's a really good story that I just don't like to watch. And next on the list is The Ambassadors of Boring Me to Death. This one. I like the story, it's too long. That's my only issue with Ambassadors of Death, it's just too long. Needed to be 4 parts, maybe 5 parts. At 7 parts, I'm sitting here going, well, I can either watch this or Star Trek the Motion Picture. Either way, I'm going to need a pillow and 37 pots of coffee. It's just too long, too long. But the story's great, I do enjoy the story. And next on the list is The Edge of Destruction. The Edge of Destruction is just a 2-parter, but it really seems to drag on just for a 2-parter. The only reason this one is as high as it is not because of necessarily the story itself, because I do find the story grating, and again, it drags for what is essentially a 2-parter. But I love the ending. I love the ending. Because this is really the first time you see the First Doctor soften up into more of the character we're familiar with. This is the first time he sees Ian and Barbara as more as just annoyances he had to bring along. He actually starts to form a bond with them. I do love the fact that Barbara is the one who figures out what's going on. Barbara's the one who saves the day. You know, these people are like, well, we've got to drag Doctor Who into the 21st century. I'm like, guys, some of the stuff you're talking about, Doctor Who's been doing since the beginning. Barbara is one of the strongest female characters I've ever seen on the show. Granted, Susan's a few steps back. Susan's pretty terrible, but they rectified that when they brought Vicky on, because Vicky's great. But Barbara's always been a strong character, and I love the fact she's the one who solves the problem. She's the one who saves the day in Edge of Destruction. And the fact that Hartnell acknowledges that, and even he acknowledges to Susan, that he might be getting senile in his old age or something like that. I forget exactly what he says, but when he goes and talks to Barbara, basically to apologize to her, and then offers her his arm. And then he's also nice to Ian right before they walk out into the snow for Marco Polo. I love that ending. It's just, to me, that's really the beginning of him starting to form bonds with Ian and Barbara, and I love that. So the ending is why it's placed as high as it is. Pretty much everything up to that I didn't care for as much. And cracking the top 5, we start getting into the ones I really like. At number 5 is Vengeance on Varos. I do like this one a lot. For the longest time, it was my favorite Colin Baker story. It is really good. I love how it kind of predicts reality TV and the silly nonsense of reality TV. The guy playing the governor is really good. This one has Syl in it. I like Syl. The guy who plays Syl is just phenomenal in Syl. In both stories with Syl, he's just phenomenal. And it's such a cool character. One of the last truly great villains to be introduced in classic. And the fact he's not even like a villain like a Dalek or a Cyberman. He's just basically a grubby little capitalist, which is why he's made as almost a slug. It's kind of a metaphor for that type of businessman, that type of capitalist businessman. And it's very apt, and I absolutely love that. The story is good. It's dark. I love the cliffhanger for part 1, that shot of Colin when he looks like he's practically dead on the ground. The effects of how they superimpose the desert over the hallway. It's an impressive story. I mean, the whole Perry turning into a bird thing doesn't really work, and Sean Connery's son and his wife don't really work. They're just kind of there. But overall, very good story. Very, very good story. Moving up into the next spot is the Sultan Experiment from season 12. A phenomenal season. I like Sultan Experiment because it's good, but it knows it doesn't need to be too long. And a 2-parter is perfect for it. Because if you'd had it as a 4-parter, it might have felt like some filler, like it was being stretched. But it knows what it's about. It's great location work. I do like the location work. I think this is one of the rare times where the location work was actually shot on camera. Ooh, I wish it had been shot on film when the elements survived. But I believe it was actually shot on camera. It's nice to see Sarah Jane get some stuff to do, Harry get some stuff to do. There is a little issue at the end with the choreography between the fight between the Doctor and the Sultan due to the guy playing the Sultan not being in the best health, and the fact that Tom Baker had broken his collarbone during this episode, so they had to kind of film around that. And it works well enough, but you can definitely, when you know what happens, you can be like, okay, I can see why they're having to do this like this. But it's a good story. Again, I like the location work. I'm glad they're not just like in a quarry or something. So, I like Sultan Experiment. It's one of my favorite Sultan episodes. Not my favorite, but it's up there. Next on the list, and I literally had to flip 2 and 3 on the list from where I wrote them down when I was going back over this right before I started shooting. I'm like, I gotta flip those. So at number 3 is Robots of Sugarwood. I like Robots of Sugarwood. It's funny. It's silly. That's one of the things that makes it work for me is it's just silly. Especially since this is Series 8 Capaldi, serious, am I a good man, old man Capaldi. But he's so childish in this episode, I love it. I like the guy playing Robin Hood too, but I just love how they butt heads. Like when they're both captured in that room and they're having their little going back and forth. Like when he's calling the Doctor an old man, he's like, I'll outlive you. You'll find I have a genetic advantage. It's so childish. And the fact that Clara basically has to act like Mom, who's splitting up 2 brothers that are fighting. It's hilarious. This is one of the episodes where I think Clara is good with 12. I usually don't like Clara with 12, but there are some episodes she's really good. This is one of the ones where she's really good. I love the scene when they're having the archery contest and Capaldi gets annoyed and he just turns around with a sonic screwdriver and blows up the target while talking. He keeps insisting none of it's real. And that bit about some of you might not live that long, or some of you might only live 6 months. How he keeps mentioning the 6 months. I love this episode. It's funny. It's amusing. It's And plus I love the fact it shows the Doctor doesn't know everything. Because he refuses to believe what's right in front of him. And I do like that. I like the fact that even the Doctor, it takes him a while to figure out what's going on. Plus, I love when it's showing historical photos of Robin Hood. We do actually get a wonderful little picture of Troughton in there. I love that they snuck that in, since he was in that Robin Hood show like back in the 50s. I love they snuck that in. So yeah, Robots of Sugarwood. On the list at number 2 is Tooth and Claw. I like Tooth and Claw. This is a good one. I like werewolf stuff. I'm a huge fan of, ever since I was little, because I was very little when Fox came out with their TV show Werewolf in their inaugural season with John J. York and Chuck Connors in it. I love that show. I still love that show. So I've always had this kind of fascination with werewolves. The werewolf in the episode does look a little dated. It's very obviously CGI. But it's fine. I mean, it came out in 2006. Let's give it some slack here. David Tennant's good in it. I love the fact he actually gets to talk in his native Scottish tongue in part of it. Billy Piper's good. I love how there are times they're still treating it kind of like a game. That's funny to me. I like the actress playing Queen Victoria. I know she's a Classic Who alum from The Faceless Ones. She does a great job as having this regal bearing, but is also someone you don't want to mess with. The guy who plays kind of her right-hand man, he does really good. I like him a lot in it. I do tend to like the cinematography in it. I think it's filmed well. I think it's shot well. The ending's a little anticlimactic, but I still like it. I think it's a huge plot hole that they built this one room that's basically werewolf-proof, and they didn't think to do something about the window up top. All right, we're going to build this room. We went through all this trouble. It'll never get in here. Let's put a nice skylight right here. Made idea. It's a bit, this has to happen because the plot needs it to happen. But other than that, it is a really good story that I've watched. I've probably seen Tooth and Claw over half a dozen times. Great episode.